And we're going to understand that grace is that unearned factor in life. And that surrender is just a letting go. It's just a letting it go as we invite in grace. And grace wants to be there. Grace wants the space. Grace is looking for space. We just have to make that space so that grace can get there. So when we have an open mind, we have a surrendered heart, we have a surrendered head, we have a surrendered life, we are set up to be in unfolding grace. And in that unfolding grace, there is such peace, there's such understanding that we've never even known that we could understand. In that place of grace, you will find joy. Thank you for that wonderful music. That was fun. That'd take you back and make you feel like a kid again. And then that one about being simple. I love that. I just always found that one to be particularly wonderful. If we could just find that place where we could remember to be simple and let go of trying to make life so complicated and get it all done. You know, if we did that place of ease and grace, we would be in grace. So let's just talk about that a little bit this morning. I want to talk about grace unfolding. And the thing about grace is, Tim, would you hand me the clicker? I don't know what else to call these things. Clickers. Thank you. I want to talk about grace and how it unfolds in our lives. So, let's see if we can get this to go. There we go. Grace is a divine gift, and it permeates all of our lives. It guides us toward love. It guides us toward understanding, toward beauty, toward peace. It guides us to understanding. Isn't it great when we understand things and understand people and can kind of put aside trying to make something of it, and we just understand that it is as it is. And that's the way it is. So grace is a gentle, unseen hand that helps us navigate the complexities of life. In our journeys, we always go into different areas of life and different ways of life, and we always have that movement toward grace. Always have grace right there, willing and ready to serve us as we surrender. We surrender that place within us that we think that we know, that we know, that we know. So it's about surrendering our ego. And in all of that, we can find ourselves in a transformed life. Anybody still allowing yourself to transform your life into a greater, into that greater expression of what you want? Me too. Me too. So spiritual maturity takes moving into emotional maturity. You know about spiritual maturity and emotional maturity, yes? Because if not, we'll have to do that another Sunday. But as we grow, we realize the importance of listening and following divine guidance. And without divine guidance, well, I don't know about you, but I can end up in the bushes. I've ended up in reeds, I've ended up in ponds, I've ended up in, lots of places I don't want to be. Now, some of it can be fun, but generally I want to go where I want to go and not just surprise myself somewhere. So we have that sense that we want to listen to guidance and go in a way that best serves our purpose, best serves that we're trying to get to. So I want to do a quick recap. I know that you know Jesus' story, but you know, Jesus was conceived out of wedlock. And his parents were on their way into Bethlehem, and lo, she decides to have her baby. And there she has it in a stable. And then there are these folks that come to visit. A lot of unusual things, very mystical birth, very unusual set of wise men that come to see. Can you imagine those wise men today, kind of bopping up with all their gifts? I mean, I really think about that. So then Jesus grew up and he began to speak, to teach, to heal. He began a life of service to others. He was baptized by John the Baptist, which means he was cleansed and started life anew. So he had these pieces that were happening to him that one might look at and say, that was grace. He was living in grace. He was following his guidance all the way. So we could say that his life was grace-filled and easy. But if we remember, there was that time that he went out into the desert and he was tempted. He was tempted by the devil. He was tempted by that devil that Charles Fillmore talks about being a mass of thoughts that are built up in race consciousness. And it's those thoughts that are built up over generations. So I want to be clear about that. The devil is not a person. The devil is an idea or a group of ideas that we build up in our consciousness, and then we label it. We need to give it a name, so we label it, right? And we say that it's big, red, and ugly, and has horns and a pointed tail. We have to do something to explain our actions. Here we have this experience of race consciousness, of the human consciousness. And sometimes we groan and we moan and we stress under all these things. Oh my gosh, can't we get into that moaning and groaning, stressing over this? I think that probably every day somebody says to me, I'm really stressed. Oh my God, Sondra, I am so stressed. Or if somebody's not saying it to me, I'm saying it to somebody. Oh, I'm so stressed out. Yeah, so how does that happen? How does that stress happen? Well, it happens by our limited beliefs. It happens by us having attachments to different things in the world and saying, this is the way it's got to be, or I've got to have that, or if this doesn't happen, then life won't be worth living. I'm involved in the church in New Braunfels, and I'm telling you, we're going about a lot of changes there, just like y'all are here. And it's so interesting to hear people going, oh, I just can't stand that. No, I can't. That's so precious. How could we ever consider changing that? Well, we can do it pretty easy. Change is change, and change is good. But we get so attached. It's important that we remember our birthright is to be happy, successful, free, whole, and fulfilled. It is not God's plan for us to suffer, to strain, to be miserable. So this Satan or devil is not a person, but rather a place in us where we have gone astray, that place in us where we think something is out of sorts. So it's a state of consciousness, and it's adverse to good. And the good news about all of that is it can be changed. So it can be changed by the renewing of our minds, and we're so grateful. So we know that indeed, in these times, life can be hard. There is a lot of change. There are things happening that we don't particularly like. We can struggle. We can find ourselves in places that we don't want to be. But just because things are hard doesn't mean we have to be hard. And just because there's suffering doesn't mean that we have to live in suffering. It can be there and we can move on. You know how it is when something hurts you and you just start to really clamp up that doesn't allow for love, for grace to move. It doesn't allow for grace to unfold if we're all clamped down and shut down. So we can take that opportunity just as Jesus did. So, in this temptation in the 40 nights, Jesus was tempted. He had been out there for 40 days and 40 nights and he hadn't eaten. So he was hungry, or at least I would have been hungry. And the devil came to him, Satan came to him and said, hey, if you turn those stones into bread, you can be fed. And Jesus said, no way, not doing it. He goes, okay, well, come with me. And he takes him up to a hill and he shows him this big city. And he says, if you worship me, you can have this city. It'll be all yours. You'll have complete control. Jesus said, not having it, was told not to worship only God and no one but God. I'm not going to worship you. I'm not going to worship this city. I'm going to remain true. So, the temptations continue on. He said, if you're the Son of God, throw yourself down. Oh, this is what the devil said, that he will command his angels, and they will put their hands out. They will support you, lest you dash your foot against the stone. And Jesus said, again, it's written, you should not put the Lord your God to the test. How many of us love to test God? Yeah, if this is to happen, well, then God's going to make it happen, right? And I'm not going to have to do a thing. Oh, yeah, we do love to test God. So, again, at least I do. So Jesus finally got tired of this, and he said, get away from me, Satan. Get behind me. Just go away. Just go away. And the angels came down, and they ministered to him, and they took care of him. And that is part of grace. That is grace unfolding in the very moment that he said, get thee behind me. Have you ever had an experience where you thought everything was just going away and going down the wrong way, and you didn't want it to go that way? And you said, get thee behind me, Satan. Or you just simply turned your back and turned away from that was. And suddenly things began to fall in place. And they started to fall into place, and you realized that grace was unfolding in your life in that moment. So let's look at grace. Grace unfolding. And much of this is from the book from Paul Ferrini. Just put that in to make sure I gave him credit. Grace. Grace can be seen as an effortless beauty or a charm, a divine favor bestowed without merit. It is a state of sanctification enjoyed through the divine assistance and the expression of love, compassion, and mercy. Doesn't that feel good? Can you live with that? Can you say yes to that? Can you say yes to grace? So grace is a no strings attached gift of love given to us by God that we may be transformed and made new. So every time we get in one of those spots, we get down in the mud and muck, all we have to do is be willing to turn our back and to open ourselves to the grace. Grace is like being met by a hug when you thought the door would be locked when you got home. Grace is like being forgiven when you think you've done something totally unforgivable. Grace. Grace is like, that time you've run up your credit cards and you're living paycheck to paycheck and you don't know how you're going to get out of it. And somebody comes up and says, your debt is forgiven. That's what grace is like. And yet, grace is more. That's just what it's like. But it's more. Can you receive that more? Can you allow that opening? Can you believe that it can be more than you've ever even dreamed of? Grace. I'll tell you, there's a lot in the Bible that we can allow ourselves to be beaten up by, but let's look at some of the nuggets that really speak to us and tell us how great we are. So in Romans 8:38-9, I am convinced that neither life nor death, nor angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, or any power, neither high nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Jesus the Christ. That's a pretty strong word. Nothing's going to be able to separate us, except there are times we think we're separated, right? And why does that happen? Well, it might mean that it is time for us to do some surrendering, because usually when we feel separate from God, it's because we've separated ourselves. When we feel separate from God, we're attached to something, and it may be time to let it go. And if we let it go easily, we don't have to put those scratch marks all the way across it. Although I have a few things in my life that I've got stretched fingernail claws across, not wanting to give it up. But when we surrender, what we're really doing is surrendering to our ego. We're surrendering to our ego, to that place of separation, those states of the heart and the mind. It is about an internal, not an external letting go. It is about allowing ourselves to surrender to truth. So we can get attached to our fears and not want to let go of them. And yet, when we let go, don't we always find ourselves protected? We find ourselves in the next right place. I think of that story that they always tell about the man that fell down the side of the mountain and somebody threw him a rope and he didn't crawl up the rope, and somebody came by in a helicopter and he didn't take it, and he was like, well, why not? And he's like, well, I was waiting for God to help me. And yet God shows up in so many ways. There's a Sufi prayer I love. It's Astaghfirullah al-Azim, and it means to remove everything that is between me and thee, Allah. Remove everything. Wash it off. Clean it. Anything that's there, just take it away. That's what we're doing when we're surrendering. We're taking away anything that stands between us and God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, whatever that name for the divine is for you. When we cleanse that place where we're attached, we begin to experience a new life. Much of us think that we are a composite of our fears and our defensive mechanisms that we have been collecting all of our lives. But it's not true. It's not truth. Not truth with a capital T. So, while the defenses may have kept us safe, they have also kept us hard. They have also kept us blocked. They've kept us in a place of fear, of lack, of doubt. So to begin to practice grace unfolding, it's important that we surrender our mind. And in surrendering our mind, we see that, oh, wow, I'm in judgment. Okay, I'm in judgment again, and I'm in judgment. And we become aware of the judgment that we experience in our daily thinking. And then there's that place where we go, oh, now I'm judging that I'm judging. And oh, look at me judging that person over there, judging that person over there, judging me. Oh my gosh, this is just ridiculous. And it is. And so we let go. We let go and we get into a quiet place. We allow our mind to take a rest, to take a breather. and we go into a place of neutrality where we can look out and there is the ability to notice what is there without judgment. It is the observer that is observing, oh, okay, that's and that. But it doesn't matter. And you know it doesn't matter. It's just happening. It's just something that's out there happening. And so you go, oh, okay. And so you begin to go deeper and deeper, and you let yourself go into your meditation more consistently. And in that place of meditation, your mind becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And suddenly, these things are just happening around you. You have an open mind. In that opening, you find a new love of life, a new way of seeing, a new way of being. That open mind. And then there comes that moment that you have to make a decision, or maybe you just aren't sure what's going to happen, and so you're ambivalent. And you go back to that place, and you're trying to figure it out, and you go back and forth, and back and forth. And then you call yourself back to the quiet place. You call yourself back to that quiet mind. And in that quiet mind, you once again remember, and you rest. And in that rest, you not only rest your mind, but you begin to be aware of your heart. And you allow yourself to fall into that place of the heart, that surrendered heart. And the surrendered heart lets go of fear on a deeper level. It begins to trust that it can trust. It begins to realize that it can soften, that it can relax into the world and not be so afraid. And so it can learn to trust and have faith in that. And I love this from Togar. It was on faith. Faith is the bird that feels the light and sings when the dawn is still dark. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. So that's when we have faith. And so now we're opening our hearts. And in that place of heart opening, we see things even with greater, clear eyes. And we go on. And so with those open and clear eyes, we allow our heart and our mind to come together. And as our heart and our mind come together, we're really in power now, right? There's nothing like heart-mind togetherness. So we find that we can surrender at even a deeper level because we can trust. But we may still have some expectations. We may still want some things. We may still have plans. And yet we get to surrender again because that's surrendering life. So we've surrendered our heads, we've surrendered our hearts, and now we're surrendering our life. And we just let that go. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do what is mine to do. I'm going to plan the best I can plan. And if that isn't happening, then I'll plan the next thing and see what happens. It's all right to not know. It's all right to have faith, surrendering and not know. So we're living in the now, fully present, not worrying about how it's happening. We're living in the now, engaged with each moment, and it's a practice of mindfulness, and it's a deep appreciation for the moment, for the presence. And you say, but wait, I have a past. How am I going to use that past? Well, the past is a teacher, and you can say, what have I learned, and go forward with it. But you don't have to live there because you're now in the now. Don't live in the past. Live in the now. Take the lesson, keep going. Invite grace in, for each step is a step of inviting grace to unfold at a deeper level, at a greater ability to unfold than ever before. We don't have to know how to do it. We don't have to figure it out. All we have to do is be willing to open our hearts, to be that unfolding connection with ourselves, with the divine, with that place within where we know that we know that we know the truth. And in there, it becomes rather easy to forgive if we need. So forgiveness is a piece of that unfoldment. And I know you know about forgiveness, because forgiveness is giving forth something good for what appears to be not so good. It's giving forth, it's stepping forward to say, this happened, and now I'm going to give some good for it. Not necessarily to the person, but you give good to the world. Change the energy in the world by giving something good. We're going to surrender, and we're going to understand that grace is that unearned factor in life. And that surrender is just a letting go. It's just a letting it go as we invite in grace. And grace wants to be there. Grace wants the space. Grace is looking for space. We just have to make that space so that grace can get there. So when we have an open mind, we have a surrendered heart, we have a surrendered head, we have a surrendered life, we are set up to be an unfolding grace. And in that unfolding grace, there is such peace, there's such understanding that we've never even known that we could understand. In that place of grace, you will find joy. And you won't have to explain it. You'll just be joyful. In that place of grace, you will be at peace. You will be at peace with yourself and peace with God. And you will feel so good. So I invite you to affirm with me. I open myself to the unfolding grace of God. Together, I open myself to the unfolding grace of God. One more time. I open myself to the unfolding grace of God.
Beginning June 9th, the 11:30 Sunday service start time will be changed to 11 o'clock. Set a reminder to join us for this early start time and tell your friends. While you're at it, set another June 9th reminder on your calendar for UCOH Identity Meeting at 1:30 in Friendship Hall. The YFM children will not be joining us at the end of the service from June 9th through July 28th. Their classes will continue during this time with lots of fun spiritual learning. We look forward to welcoming them back to the service on August the 4th. Get your aprons on and your baking sheets ready for the Father's Day dessert design competition on Sunday, June 16th. We invite you to co-create your dessert design with anyone in your life who supported you in a father's role and bring to church to share. Check the UCOH calendar for details. Fall enrollment in our We Wisdom preschool is open. If you know someone who would love to enroll their precious wee one in our excellent school, please spread the word. Contact our preschool director, Carrie Monk, for any questions. UCOH offices will be closed tomorrow, as they are every Monday, in observance of Memorial Day. Are values the same as principles? If not, what is the difference? Join Reverend Jean Lean next Sunday at the 8:30 service in Legacy Suites or on Facebook. Grab a cup of coffee and settle in as Reverend Jean explores how values and principles transform our lives. At our 11:30 service, join Joni Lorraine, Spiritual Director, in the sanctuary or online as she answers the question we are often asked ourselves: who wore God's face today? Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.